Okay.
Welcome, everybody. We just want to welcome you guys all to the recorded version of our Healthy Minds, Connected Minds webinar series. These will all be available on our website shortly. But in the meantime, we will be emailing it out to everyone. So if you're interested in getting a copy of this, we'll provide you with our emails at the end, and then we can send you the recorded version. This week's topic is about emergency preparedness. I know usually around this time, I mean, knock on wood, grateful that it's not right now, but usually around this time, it's quite smoky here in the Okanagan because of our wildfire season, and it isn't so far, so we're glad. But we just wanted to talk about emergency preparedness and what you can do in advance to prepare yourself if anything like a wildfire does occur. And so we'll go through that a little bit. It is a brief presentation on how to be prepared. There's many resources out there. We're going to be sharing some as well. I'll introduce myself as well for those who don't know. I am Naz. I am the community educator for CMHA Vernon. So pre-COVID, my job was going to businesses, going to schools, and teaching about mental health, teaching about suicide awareness and prevention as well. I also help run some of our youth programming, and I also do our third-party training like mental health first aid. And I'll let Tammy introduce herself.
Thanks, Naz. So yeah, I'm Tammy. I work here at CMHA Vernon as well. I'm the group facilitator here. So that means during times that were before COVID, what I did was facilitate small groups where we learned about different skills about managing mental health. So we have some groups that are things like anxiety management, learning boundaries, learning how to do some self-care for depression, and things like that. So now that COVID has kind of changed what we're doing a lot more things virtually, like these webinars. So I've been working with Naz to put some of these together. And so this version of emergency preparedness is something that we wanted to talk about. We felt like it was pretty topical. As Naz said, we're kind of heading into wildfire season, and there's definitely some news out there about flooding that we have to be aware of. So just good to be thinking about how to make sure we can be prepared for things. This is our just our little disclaimer. All of these webinars, what we do is we take as much information as we can from highly credible Canadian sources whenever possible. And we hope that you can find some things that are helpful from the presentation. We're not intending this to be medical or professional or legal advice. So we just want you to take what you can from it. And in any point, if you ever feel like you need a bit more support, please know that the crisis lines are there 24 hours a day to support you. So we've got two numbers up here, 1-800-784-2433. That's a BC-wide number. You can call that from anywhere in the province of BC. And then the Interior Crisis Line number, 1-888-353-CARE or 2273. And that is a 24-hour number that you can call if you ever feel like you need support anywhere within the Interior Health region. If you're watching this today from somewhere outside of BC or outside of the Interior Health region, you can still phone those numbers and they will let you know the number that is the best to call for your specific area. So just to always be aware that those crisis lines are always there for you if you need them.
Getting started, we want to talk about what we need to prepare for. What kind of hazards are in the Okanagan or BC wide, and emergencies do happen, so it is best to be prepared for them. I know last year we definitely didn't see a whole bunch of smoke compared to previous years, but it was still happening. Wildfires were still happening. So we want to be prepared for that. Like Tammy said, we had a little bit of flooding that happened over the weekend as well. That's something that we need to be prepared for as well. So it does sound scary, especially when emergencies happen and we aren't prepared for them. So, but it doesn't have to be. And that's kind of what we want to talk about is, getting prepared. How can we get prepared? And we'll talk about ways you can understand the hazards you may face and then also how to prepare for them.
So these are just a few tips here. As you may know, if you've been living in BC for a while, nearly half of all wildfires in BC are caused by human carelessness. So you can prevent them by following a very few simple rules. So the first one is just checking for bans and restrictions. And that is something that you can do just by going on the BC Wildfire website. Also, usually campgrounds usually let you know right when you come in whether or not there's a wildfire ban going on. That's the next part there about the camping responsibly, just making sure that you're aware of what restrictions are in the area. And then there's a phone number, the 1-800-663-5555 or *5555 on your cell phone. So if you ever see smoke, flames, or an unintended campfire, you can phone this number and let them know so that they can take action as fast as possible. With wildfires, most of them start out really small, whether it's a cigarette or a campfire. It starts small, so the faster action is taken, the faster it can be prevented from becoming a bigger problem.
And then some things that you can do to prepare yourself before an emergency happens are things like having home insurance, preparing for an evacuation, and preparing for emergencies. So always ensure that your home insurance is up to date and that it has adequate coverage, especially for things such as fire damage. Always pull together a grab and go bag for each member, or at least one bag for your household in case you do have to leave quickly, and make sure that it's in an accessible area. Don't wait for an evacuation to occur, in order to get everything together. I know for many people, when we are in this kind of panic mode, we tend to forget the necessary things we need. So if we can prepare them beforehand and have them ready to go, that's great, whether it's, in the shoe closet ready to go. But make sure you're updating it as well, because sometimes food does expire, things do expire. You may take something out of the emergency bag and forget to put it in. So just check on it every now and then to make sure that your grab and go bag is up to date. And make sure you have an emergency plan and talk it out with your family and what that looks like, having a muster point, knowing where your emergency kits are, how to get into contact with each other, and what to do if there is an emergency. So make sure, to review it, but then also make sure that it is up to date, make sure all the resources that you have on there are still working, and making sure that other family members are aware of the plan as well.
So this is just some information that tells you a little bit more about how fire can affect your home and some easy things you can do to prevent fire. So it shows you here about how if you have coniferous trees or deciduous trees, the difference in how flammable they are. So the coniferous trees are the ones that look like the Christmas tree there, and they are highly flammable. The deciduous trees or the leafy trees are much less flammable. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're putting landscaping around your house, including how close you want those trees to your house. Usually they recommend keeping any trees on your property a fair distance away from the house, just for that very reason. And then just things like piling wood. If you have a wood stove or a fireplace, a lot of us tend to pile wood just right beside the house. And that is something that can be fuel for fire. So something simple, just taking that wood pile and putting it away from the house can make a big difference. And dried grasses, plants, leaves, twigs, those are all things that can be fuel for fire. So having just a few feet around the edges of the house where there is no things built up, so just some basic landscaping, making sure that any branches are raked away, any fallen leaves that might be dry, maybe they fell and they were wet in the spring and then over the summer they dry out, just making sure they're kind of raked away from the edges. When it comes to building materials of what your house is made of, that can make a big difference in how flammable the house is. So wood shakes, of course, or wood or vinyl siding or wooden fences are a bit more flammable. So again, then you would want to make sure that you have trees and brush cut back from those structures.
So next we're going to talk about 10 main steps that you can do to prepare for emergencies. And the first one is to know the hazards. The hazards will vary depending on where you live. In the Okanagan, one of the more common hazards here are wildfires, so to be prepared for that. The top 10 risks in BC, though, are earthquakes, tsunamis, floods, landslides, avalanches, severe weather pattern changes, power outages, hazardous material spills, wildfires, and disease outbreaks. So those are the 10 main risks to prepare for in BC. But again, it does vary region to region. So just knowing, in your region, what is most likely to be the most common hazard and how to prepare for that.
So step 2, make a phone list. So this seems kind of basic, but it's something to be aware of. If you've made a phone list before, you might want to go back and update it to make sure everybody's number is correct. People do change their phone numbers sometimes. So making a master list of family and emergency numbers and ensuring everyone in the household has a copy. In an emergency, using text message, email, or social media to communicate. Database services are less likely to experience major interruptions. It's good to make sure that if you have a master list of family and emergency numbers, first of all, everybody knows where it is. I know in my house we have a list on the fridge, just because that's a central location for us. So we at least know where our master list is. And then we try to make sure on everybody's cell phone, all of those contacts are updated whenever somebody changes a phone number. One of the things to think about if you are in a region where you're thinking about emergencies, like if there's a wildfire evacuation, is to make sure that on your master list you have at least one person who's an out of area contact. So someone who maybe doesn't live in the same town as you, but someone that you could call to let them know that there's something going on, so that you have some connection to the outside world if there's some kind of drastic evacuation order or something going on where you live. You want to make sure that you talk to everybody about this phone list so that everybody knows where it is, everybody knows that it's updated. And if you haven't done that in a while, it might be something just to do once a year, just to make sure that everybody remembers, because if it's easy to forget about it unless you talk about it.
The third step is to pick a meeting place or a muster point. So decide where your family members will meet during an emergency. Gathering, if the emergency is not at home, gathering at home is ideal, but always have a second location. For example, if your house is on fire, your house obviously would not be the ideal place to be meeting. So try to meet somewhere that's further away from it, and try to make sure that it's an accessible place to meet as well. Try not to make it too far away or, in a hard location to get to, especially if you don't have access to vehicles, etc. So that's something to consider. It could be another person's home. It could be, the coffee shop that we always go to, whatever it may be, just making sure that everyone, A, is aware of what the muster point is and is easy accessible so that people are able to get there.
So planning for your kids or dependents. So talking to your kids about emergencies, being honest and straightforward. And if you have young children, you need to consider what happens if you can't make it to their school. So when you're talking about emergencies, you're talking about things like the muster point that Naz was saying. You want to make sure that the kids know where it is. If for some reason something happens and they don't know where to find you, kids can panic. So you might want to just have a gathering place just right outside of the house. So if it's not safe to be in the house, where are we going to meet? Are we going to meet on the front lawn by, maybe there's a fire hydrant out front, or is there a neighbor that we trust and we know well? Are we going there? Just so that everybody is on the same page of where to go if there's an emergency. And if you can't make it to their school, you just want to make sure the school has alternate contacts, so that if they can't get a hold of you or you can't get a hold of the school, there's someone else on the school's records that they can get a hold of, someone that you trust, to make sure that they can take care of them if for whatever reason that you can't. So just something to think about, and to make sure it's updated as well. Things do change. People move, people change their phone number. So hopefully just by listening to this presentation today, it might be something just to remind yourself, just to check to make sure all of that information is up to date as of today.
The fifth step is to know where to get your information from. So, contact your community's emergency management program. That's usually for this case, probably most likely would be the City of Vernon. Find credible resources as well. Some resources available for BC is emergencyinfobc.ca. And then on Facebook, you can also find the BC Wildlife Services. Canada, I think it was last year, year before, was also rolling out emergency text that would go to your phone if anything was to occur. I know they were testing it last year. So you may get alerts on your phone as well if anything is to occur. But definitely try to make sure you find credible resources and up-to-date information and resources as well. News media can be good, but just try to find more government-based resources.
Mm-hmm. There's lots of information on Facebook, but it's not always credible. So this Facebook BC Wildfire Service, they have a specific page that they update, which is a great information source. This is an example of the BC Wildfire website. So this is a screenshot. I looked this up last Thursday, June 11th. So this shows you exactly where any fires are, where they were in the last few days. So you can see as of Thursday, there was only 2. I think if you'd even looked at this map last year at this time, you would have seen quite a few more dots. So this is, they are really good about keeping this up to date and letting you know if there's any evacuation orders in your area, or if there's any fires that are getting close to where you are. So this is for the province of BC. It's a great website, and really to find it, all you need to do is go to Google and type in BC Wildfire Dashboard, BC Wildfire Dashboard, and you'll be able to find this map.
So step 6 is to know how to turn off your utilities as well. So locating things like your electrical panel, your water, and your gas valves, and learning how to turn them off in case of a leak, or if you've been instructed to do so. I know personally I did not know how to do it until I came upon this presentation. So if you suspect a gas leak at all, make sure you turn off the gas valve and leave immediately. And once you've left, then definitely call the appropriate resources. But once the gas is shut off at the meter, don't try to turn it back on. Only a registered gas contractor can do that safely. So BC Hydro in our case. But definitely make sure you can locate where all those panels are, and then also know how to turn them off, especially in the case of a gas leak, making sure to leave immediately because it is harmful.
Yeah, and when it comes to a gas leak, we want to show you this little video because, I know for some people, a picture like this can really be stressful if you're not mechanically inclined. So you do have that reassurance to know that there's a phone number you can call for help. And so I'm going to show you a video about that right now.
If you smell rotten eggs, it could be natural gas. Natural gas is used safely every day. But if you smell rotten eggs, stop whatever you're doing. Go outside and call Fortis BC's 24-hour emergency line or call 911. Fortis BC, providing natural gas, electricity, and propane energy solutions.
So if you don't remember the number and you can't find the number, you can always call 911.
Step 7 is to store some emergency waters. So water is a very important item to store. So having at least 4 liters of water per person per day as well also takes pets and other people like dependents into consideration as well. And make sure to check your water supply every 6 months and replenish it as needed. With the water sources as well, try to have some in your emergency prepared bed to grab and go bag, but also try to have it in another location as well. I know for myself, because I do tend to travel down to the lower mainland a lot, just in case of an emergency, I always have a couple water bottles in my car. So that can always be an option as well as just having some water stored. But definitely making sure to replenish any supply that you have every 6 months or so, or as needed.
So stocking emergency supplies. So I think we're all kind of familiar with this now that we've all been through this pandemic and we've seen people going a bit hardcore with this emergency supplies, what is recommended is to have enough non-perishable food to support your household for up to 1 week, so that if something does go wrong, you have that to fall back on. And if the power is out, of course, you'd want to use the food from the fridge and freezer first, followed by the pantry, to try to make your food last as long as possible. So when you're thinking of non-perishable food, you're thinking of things like canned food, rice, lentils, beans, those kind of things that you can have in your kitchen for a long time without having to worry about spoilage.
Make sure to be checking on your emergency supplies as well, especially if it's been a while since you checked your bag. I know last time I checked my pantry, I had soup cans in there that were expired in 2019. So just make sure to be checking in on them as well, and just make sure that the food that you have in your pantry or in your emergency bag is good to go. For step 9, you want to consider other needs that you may not be considering in the moment. Things like medical records, those are difficult to access during a disaster. So making sure that you have, medical records easily accessible, somewhere that, in case you need them, you have them. If you rely on a prescription, definitely talk to your primary care provider, or talk to your pharmacist on how you can have an extra supply in case you need it. And then other things to consider are, motorized wheelchairs, guide dogs, hearing aids, pets in general, any dependents that you may have, just anything that you need to think about accommodating for, or need extra supply of, just keeping that in mind as well. Maybe that's something to talk about as a family in terms of, okay, if we do have to evacuate the house, what do we do about the pets? What do we do about, so-and-so's wheelchair, whatever it may be. So definitely having a conversation and brainstorming of other things that you may need. I know when we did this presentation before, one of the individuals talked about how her mind went to wedding photos, and she said, oh, I need to save my wedding photos. And then after, she goes, I'm so stupid. Why did I save my wedding photos out of everything? So that's why it's so important to kind of consider all these things before the emergency happens. Again, because when an emergency happens, our mind tends to be all over the place, and we have a hard time remembering exactly what we do need.
Yeah, especially if you have multiple people in your household. If you have the conversation now when everybody's calm and really can think about what you think is the best choice, then you're all on the same page. Because if there's an emergency and there's an evacuation, emotions just run high. And so you might be able to save yourself some arguments and disagreements in the moment. So this grab and go bag that Naz has been mentioning. So this is just a backpack just full of some basics that you can keep in your vehicle, or you might be able to keep at work, or somewhere where it's easy to grab. Just some very basics. They've got water in there, first aid kit, shoes, some toiletries, anything that you feel would be important that you would be able to grab and have with you, so that if you did have to evacuate, you know that you have all of that stuff that you need. Something that is just a bit of a reassurance for you, so that you don't have to run around the house trying to think about what to put in a bag. You already have a bag ready to go. So you might want to think about having a backpack per person, so that if whatever reason you get separated, everybody has what they need in their own backpack. And that might be very different depending on who the person is. Maybe one person might need some medication or something in the backpack and somebody else wouldn't. So just very essential needs that are easy to grab and go.
This is an example of what your bag could look like. Again, it does vary from person to person, but definitely making sure that you have a first aid kit in there. You see that there's batteries in there, having batteries. Some people have recommended having like a radio in there as well, just in case your phone isn't working, or if your phone dies, you have a way to communicate with others. Water definitely as well, extra phone chargers if you need it. Clothing, shoes, just anything that you may need, especially with, if you've got pets, that might be something to consider. Extra water for them, having non-perishable food items in there as well, such as granola bars, whatever it may look like. And then definitely making sure that you have your medication in there if you need it.
I think it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but I think there's also a roll of coin in there. So that's something to consider too. Maybe just having a small amount of cash can be helpful too, depending on where you are. That might be something that would be useful in the moment, just to have that already prepared and ready to go. Here are some resources where you can get a lot more information if you want to. So there's the government in British Columbia website has a lot of information. It's a website called Get Prepared. If you search getprepared.gc.ca, you'll find it, which is where we got a lot of information for this presentation, and it goes into more detail about recommendations for what you might want to put in your grab-and-go bag, and different recommendations for what you might want to have with medical records, etc. The crisis line is always a great resource. You can call that if you need emotional support, but you can also find out if there's different resources in your area that might be helpful for you. And neighbors, friends, and family. So if you know there's a neighbor that you trust and that would be helpful, or if you have a friend or a family member that you really want to make sure, those are resources that you might want to talk to about your plans, and let them know, if this were to happen, you're one of my safe contact people, and let them know, what you're thinking so that they're prepared as well. Is there anything that you wanted to add to this slide there, Naz?
Nope, none.
Okay. So that's the end of our presentation. That was quick, just kind of simple tips that you can do to be prepared. And I'll let Naz let you know about how to register for future webinars.
Yeah. So if you are interested in our future webinars, we do them live as well. We provide recorded versions if you need them, but we are live bi-weekly on Thursdays at 11 a.m. It used to be Tuesdays and Thursdays, but we are now Thursdays for anyone that is wondering about that. And to register, all you have to do is email us at support@cmhavernon.ca. And then every Monday before the presentation, we email you out the Zoom link and then also the topic for the week. Our topics are different for every session. And if there's any topics that you are interested in learning about when it comes to mental health, let us know, and we can try and see what we can do about that for sure. So thank you so much for being with us during this time. And again, we look forward to seeing you during our live webinars. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at support@cmhavernon.ca. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.